what employees are coming to the organization with is a much greater demand for online services, for content, information to kind of know what's going on, and the value that people put in these things has increased significantly in that time.
That's true. One of the things I think about when you're talking about employee demand, right? What they're actually looking and asking for from an organization in terms of technology and otherwise, I always think about it's not so much a dichotomy, but it's sort of this relationship that exists between the consumer experience and the employee experience. And for a time, I was kind of thinking that, okay, what's happening is these worlds are converging. And it's actually a little bit of both of these two concepts, the convergence of the consumer experience with the employee experience, as well as the consumer experience leads the employee experience, the expected employee experience.
Welcome to another episode of Fresh Perspectives. I am David Bowman, Product Director for Fresh.
I'm Jabez Forst, Senior Product Manager for Fresh.
And we are joined today by a special guest, Daniel Amaro from Klarinet Solutions. Daniel, say hello.
Hi, nice to be here.
Thank you for coming. You went blank there very briefly, Dan.
Oops. I didn't do anything. So
no worries. All right. Today we're going to talk about getting ready for intranet projects. Dan and Klarinet Solutions have delivered hundreds, maybe thousands of intranet projects in their rich history as a business, and we're going to talk about some of those things today. Dan, give us a bit of an intro. Tell us who are Klarinet Solutions? Who are you? What do you guys get up to?
Right. So Klarinet Solutions. I mean, I would say, we recently talked to a bunch of clients to understand why did they even come to us to work with us, and really they said three things. One is that they're looking to increase productivity. Two is they're looking to increase the quality or quantity of their communication, and three is that they're looking to take a strong culture and make it stronger. And so what I've been saying and kind of getting with the team around, just kind of solidifying this, is what we believe. And I've kind of identified three things that we think are really important to at least communicate. One is that we believe that that profit or impact, depending on what you're looking to accomplish, is really the product of doing the right things. Second, we believe that when employees are connected, engaged, and empowered, they're more likely to be impactful or profitable. And lastly, the thing that actually gets us up in the morning is we believe that every employee should have the opportunity to connect their work to meaningful purpose. And all we focus on at Klarinet is Microsoft 365 technology that accomplishes that. And that includes intranets. So very appropriate conversation for today.
And you guys are based in San Diego.
We are.
And I guess as a Brit visiting the US, spending time on the West Coast and the East Coast, I think there's a pretty sort of clear difference between the two. Nothing bad, no negatives. And I guess I've heard it referred to as being the kind of West Coast vibe, right? As kind of innovation, collaboration, partnership. Do you think this is a real thing, and does it affect the way that you do business with your customers?
I'd have to say, man, there's this line from the movie The Departed. Jack Nicholson, it's the beginning of the film, right? He's a bad guy. He's bad guy. But what he says sticks with me. It's really interesting. It's like, do you want to be a product of your environment, or do you want your environment to be a product of you? And I think it's a bit of both, right? In a way, and I got to say that there's no denying that because Klarinet is based in San Diego, because I'm born and raised in San Diego, never lived anywhere else, it does influence how we approach business, how we approach clients, how we approach everything. And there's even this bit of cross-border thing that we have, because I grew up 5 minutes from the USA and Mexico border, right? And the majority of people in my town speak Spanish. That's just how it is. So you layer that on top of, this California thing. When people think of Southern California, what do you think of? Of course, you think of sunshine and waves and surfing. And yes, I do surf. So it's pervasive, right? But what that means in terms of business is I do think it kind of gives us this interesting sort of unique perspective on what's important. And that kind of feeds right into what we believe, right? What we believe is important is partnership, right? We put a ton of emphasis on this, and we see everyone as a partner. The employees, the partners, the clients, people who actually come and they're amazing people who help me clean up the office. They're partners. Everybody's a partner. So that's how we approach everything. And I think it's a California, even Southern California sort of vibe that we have. I think that would be true. Yeah,
I'm pleased to hear that this is a real thing, because it sounds kind of
real.
cool. So I
It's a
like
real
I
thing.
like the fact that
It does, yeah.
it's actually kind of something that's kind of tangible. Have you got a recent kind of aha moment, or something that's made you smile about the impact that intranets have had? A customer, a conversation, something at an event.
A recent one that was really, really good. You know, I think that this was a good one. We're talking to a prospective client, right? They haven't signed a contract yet, but we treat everybody the same. We treat
Yeah,
them all like they're partners no matter what, right? That's how we do it. And the thing that really stuck with me and told me that we're doing the right things is what they said when I was following up and saying, "Hey, how do you want to move forward with this project?" And they said, "You know what? We're not 100% sure on what technical solution, because we proposed a couple of them, but we're really sure about you guys. That's it." So that was something that told me, like, what we're trying to do is connect with them at that partnership level. And the technology almost doesn't matter. It's really the relationship that matters more than anything else. So hearing that from that client, prospective client, was really encouraging. I think that was a really good story, and it was just saying to me that we're doing the right things, and we can fit in whatever technology solution is appropriate as long as we have that relationship.
yeah, yeah. I think that that kind of, and it sounds like maybe a cliche to say it, but like that, that kind of power of partnership, right? Of the technology, it's important in all of these conversations, right? It is an enabler to delivery, success, cultural change, whatever it happens to be. But it is, that kind of the relationship between the human beings that is, it's that is really where the magic is.
It's funny you say the word cliche to describe that, because I do fear that at the same time, right? That I repeat things or have to say it over and over again, or it's just getting old and stale. And cliche kind of implies that. But in reality, I mean, it's worth saying again. You're right. Yeah, I think you're 100% correct that it's the humans, it's the relationship that really matters. It's the technology is like second place.
Yeah. And look, I guess extending this a little bit, if you weren't working in digital employee experience, intranets wasn't the thing that you were doing. Where else would you have found this, this kind of power of partnership? I guess.
I mean, that's a really hard question because I can't see myself doing anything else really. But I would say that what I think it goes right down to why I do what I do. And I look at what I do as, let's be clear about what I do. Uh, I lead an organization that is people first, right? That's solution second, that's looking for things that are impactful to people. That's what I do. I lead them to do that work. And I have a mission of what I'm trying to accomplish. And that really is making the most positive impact we can for our clients and for ourselves. We are no different than our clients. We treat all of us, again, the same. We're partners all the way through. So the question really is, what else would I be doing besides technology to really do that same thing where I'm just trying to make a positive impact? I would say I'm fascinated with social psychology, how people think, human behavior, what motivates them. So in that regard, I'd find something that would where I could apply that kind of passion, no matter what it is. But other than that, honestly, I'd go surfing.
Nice. Yes, I was going to say that was a much better answer than the one that I gave to somebody who asked me a similar question recently, and my response was, "I'd be driving those little trains in Disney World in the car park." I love the idea of being able to do something like that.
I think that
That made me
sounds
very
like a good idea too. Actually, it's not a bad way to go.
yeah.
But then, like, we have worked together, I think, for 7+ years already, like in this context of internet. And I know that you have a lot of experience delivering intranets or like doing like the internet projects. So, what's the biggest change you have seen in how organizations think about their digital workplace? If you look back, like from how it started and where we are now.
Well, for me, It started about 27 years ago. So when I was working on an intranet, it was basically HTML. It was pages and pages and pages of links and information that was HTML information. All of it was just resource intensive sort of information. And really, I think what has changed, what's shifted from that time until now is really how we think about the structures that support people in organizations. So at that time, 27, 30, whatever years ago, right? The mindset was much more that we're building a system where people are interchangeable pieces to it, and what we need is an intranet that provides us the stability, the congruency, and sort of the resources that allow us to just change these parts out as needed. And I think there's still a lot of that actually still today. That's true. However, I think we have really matured in general in business. We've matured and we've realized that what we're really dealing with. I think even with the new generations, it's made it even more apparent, at the forefront. We can't ignore it anymore. I think that's really the case. It's never been not the case that people are always humans and they need to be treated differently. It's just now we can't ignore it, right? And so I think that that's what's really changed is the impact that an intranet is able to provide, the reasons why we want to build an intranet at all. I will say that we still build intranets that have resources, right? That make it easy for people to find them, to sort them, to filter them, that now we're leveraging AI on top of that. All that still applies. And where we've kind of elevated the use case of an intranet is where we're starting to talk about employee experience. How does it feel when you go to an intranet? Those are words we would never have used 27 years ago, right? How does this make you feel? That was like ridiculous in business. But now it's really like, how does this make you feel? What do you think about this? What's your input?
Mm.
How do we get buy-in from the people? Because I think we've realized that you can put all the money you want into an internet solution. If you have no users that are buying into that solution, that are actually leveraging it, you've got zero ROI.
No, I think that the fact that the technology has evolved also like helps with the like increasing the impact of the internet, because now like it's much more flexible on how you can reach people, and people like who would be harder to reach in the past. If you think like of frontline workers, now like via mobile experience you can like also reach them, right, and like be in contact with the entire organization basically, which is I think like in terms of impact like very helpful.
Yeah, and I guess the other change, I think you kind of were kind of hinting on this that you're in your answer there, Daniel, that the demands that employees have and end users of intranets have is increasing all the time as well, right? When you think about kind of what an intranet was 27 years ago of a list of links on a page somewhere, what employees are coming to the organization with is a much greater demand for online services, for content information, to kind of know what's going on, and the value that people put in these things has increased significantly in that time.
That's true. That's true. One of the things I think about when you're talking about employee demand, right? What they're actually looking and asking for from an organization in terms of technology and otherwise, I always think about it's not so much a dichotomy, but it's sort of this relationship that exists between the consumer experience and the employee experience. And for a time, I was kind of thinking that, okay, what's happening is these worlds are converging, right? And it's actually a little bit of both of these two concepts, the convergence of the consumer experience with the employee experience, as well as the consumer experience leads the employee experience, the expected employee experience. How do I mean? What do I mean by that? What am I actually talking about here? So let's take, for example, I mean, the one that's relevant, really relevant today, artificial intelligence, right? So we have now become completely, I will say this as a blanket statement, right? We're completely used to, instead of Googling something, opening the tabs for each of the results, and then sifting through those blog posts or articles or whatever information websites that we would used to do, we're used to now just getting the answer,
Yeah.
right? And so that same consumer experience is being expected in the organization as an employee, right? It's a perfect example of that. Now, what I used to think was these things are converging, and in reality, it kind of leads, but at the same time, because the technology is moving so fast, it's actually doing a bit of both. It's leading and it's converging. The lead time used to be about 5 years when something would happen in the consumer space, and then employees would actually expect that in the organization. That, I believe, that timeline has collapsed, It's been shortened. And that's really what's going on. So the reason why we have things like Yarbus, you were talking about frontline employees, text messages, right? A lot of this is born out of necessity, right? We have to adapt and change. We have to change the technology. And David, to your point, a lot of that is coming from the employees, right? That they're expecting this technology to exist in the organization. And one of the questions I would ask, we're in 2025 right now. This is a question I ask clients is, it's 2025 outside. What year is it inside your organization? And oftentimes that answer is, well, it's 2020 or it's 2018 or God forbid, it's 2013 in your environment, right? There are some environments where that is the case. And if it isn't the case in reality, it feels that way. And that is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, so these when you're kind of get into these conversations with customers, and there is a project that's got to begin there, right? An intranet project is going to begin and end. That might be a kind of greenfield installing from scratch. It might be uplifting, upgrading, changing something from one state to another, improvements. We've had lots of conversations in the time that we've spent together about what does it mean to be ready for an intranet project. And we've talked about kind of observations of customers that come and are kind of completely ready for a project. What are the sort of things that you're looking for there? What does being ready for an intranet project mean for you?
Oh my gosh, that's it could be a minefield. But some of the things that I think are really very relevant and must-haves, where we see sort of intranet projects that are struggling to be completed. I would say there's two, maybe three main components, really. There's three main components. Number one is the obvious, is we really need to have an executive sponsor. Someone who's there. Why? Why the executive sponsor? We can just say that. I feel compelled to say why. The reason why we have to talk about an executive sponsor is why. Why are we building an intranet, right? Let's connect this to the strategic initiatives of the organization. If there isn't a strategic imperative to do this, it's not going to be successful. And that requires an executive sponsor, whatever that means for you, senior vice president, CEO, somebody, I don't know, but that's who it needs to be. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say we need to have is not an executive sponsor, but a champion, someone who is actually going to make sure that the connections are taking place between resources in the organization and things are moving forward, right? Someone who's tasked with or charged with making sure this is a success. That's an important piece. If you don't have those two things, you really can't talk about the third. And the third thing that I see is really a challenge for a lot of people, but can be overcome over time through an intranet project, is content. That is the hardest thing to do. Now, there's two kinds of content that I really focus on in intranets, and there's one is much tougher than the other. There's news content, and what news content is really trying to do at a high level is just gain continuity of mission, vision, values, right? Get people connected, get that employee engagement going, right? The employee experience, all those things we're talking about. The second kind of content that I think about in intranets is more of that resource content. And that tends to be the stumbling block. That is the hardest thing to put together. Now, with that said, though, you can overcome that if you have a good executive sponsor and you have a good champion, you're going to be good to go, but you have to know. And that's something we work with our clients on in the sales process, being fully transparent about what is going to be expected of them and where we've seen things fall down in these projects. It really comes down to that content. But those are the three things I would say that you would need to be ready to then start an intranet project.
I think that that kind of champion is interesting because I hear people say look, executive sponsorship is a kind of make or break thing for projects. I completely agree, but they aren't necessarily the person that is going to go and make this happen in the organization. And it can be difficult, as a vendor walking into those situations where you're going to run a project, you've got some leadership skills in the project team, and you're providing some consultancy, but it does need someone on the customer side that is going to own and love this thing as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Agreed.
But and I think that not just like throughout kind of the project and the launch, but like also afterwards, right? Like when you have delivered the intranet.
I have to repeat a word you said, David, because the words we use really, really matter, right? You said love this thing. Like that implies a lot. There's a lot to unbox with that one word, right? It's
Yeah.
such a heavy word that in the, rom-com movies, it's like they don't say it till the very end. You know what I mean? That's the kind of word that we're talking about. But you're 100% correct that it requires someone to use that word when they're describing that solution.
Yeah, yeah. And we've spoken to numerous people in the course of making these episodes, and I would describe a lot of those people as loving the service that they're providing to their customers. Right? They're committed. They want this to be better. They take all of the feedback they get from people in the organization seriously, and I think that is a kind of really encapsulating someone that loves this service, this product that they are putting out to their organization.
If we start like looking here more towards how things are happening right now, especially looking at Microsoft and the direction that Microsoft is taking with SharePoint, it is fact that Microsoft is doing a lot of work in SharePoint. They have improved the platform a lot. Like I just came from a call with a client, and we were talking about flexible layouts, and it is so nice to be able to show the homepage of the intranet with flexible layouts and the different ways you can design it now, right? So that really helps improve like the look and feel of your solution. So how do you see kind of internets evolving with the Microsoft, the direction Microsoft is taking with their strategy? Not like just looking at the improvements that they are doing kind of on the pages when we think of SharePoint, but also like in terms of AI, of course.
I mean, there's a lot going on, right? So when you talk about flexible sections, you're talking about AI, you're talking about, I mean, we can go down any kind of rabbit hole. And the thing I must admit, Yarbus, is you're talking to a SharePoint nerd. So I'm going to try to tread lightly here and not dive into a
Don't
rabbit
tread
hole
lightly.
immediately. I was like, but I
Go
will
for
go
it.
down rabbit holes. The thing that's interesting. Okay, so here's something to think about. I've been a SharePoint guy for a long time. Um, and there's no, I do have clients that are still running on-prem modern, right? And it is night and day difference between what is on-prem and what is online. And when you start working with those two things, you forget when you're on premise. Oh, we don't have that feature. Oh, we don't have that functionality. Oh, we don't have this. We
Yeah.
don't. None of that stuff is there. None of it's there. It's mind blowing the strides that Microsoft has made and what they're constantly doing. And the thing about it that's so interesting to me is we don't notice it. It's like this, that kind of analogy of the frog being boiled in a way, right? It's slowly happening to us, but it's good. It's actually not as being boiled. I don't know why we're going to say that, but anyway, um, the point being is that we're seeing these slow, iterative adaptations, additions, feature changes, additions to SharePoint, and it's making the product so robust. Um, I would say that we're also seeing this huge swing back into the Microsoft ecosystem. And I think a lot of that has to do with, and I know we've talked about this before, David, so it's nothing that it's not my idea. But a lot of it has to do with the AI play, right? The idea being we have a lot of clients that are coming to us actually going, hey, you know what? I want to go Copilot. I want to leverage AI in our organization. But I know that if I don't have my content there, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And so now they're taking another look at SharePoint, another look at
Yes.
Teams. They're getting serious about adopting these things. I mean, what that's doing is it's pulling us back into and taking another really serious look at SharePoint-based intranets, right? It's almost like this revival of SharePoint intranets. Now, as far as what the future looks like from there, I would say, when we talked about the consumer experience versus the employee experience, I think that's a really good indicator of where this is going to go and where opportunity exists, right? Where we need to meet the employees. Where Microsoft isn't, because Microsoft, they're amazing and fantastic. They're also like this huge beast that you just can't fight.
Yeah.
I people like are anti-Microsoft. I don't understand it. I'm like, you can be as anti-Microsoft as you want. I still think you're going to lose. So I think what you need to do is look at it like, how can I play with Microsoft's ecosystem? Where are the gaps, and where are my employees trying to get, and how can I provide functionality on top of that? Which is one of the things that we actually really love about Fresh Intranet, right? Is because that's the philosophy of Fresh is let's leverage Microsoft and build where there's gaps. Let's recognize where those are and do it strategically with intent. But we're not replacing what
Yeah.
Microsoft has. That's the smart
Embrace rather
part.
than fight.
Right.
Yeah.
Just and on this the kind of evolution of digital employee experience in the kind of AI Copilot era. What's your views on consolidating user interface, web parts, home pages down into a single chat box? Do you think that this is a kind of realistic place that intranets will go? Is there a browser-based user interface, or is this just a chat box in future?
So I think that's a great question. And again, I'm going to call back to the consumer experience to give us some indication, because if we're serious about this idea that the consumer experience is leading the employee experience, what we need to start taking a serious look at is, what is the consumer experience and where is it going? So the thing about that, though, if you think about it, what we're looking and seeing is AI is making a play here, right? So in finding information, something that's a historical use case for an intranet, AI must be applied. It's not a question of if it should be applied, it must be applied. Now, the danger here that people kind of immediately sort of raise a red flag on is, well, if I do that, I have to govern things. And I haven't been governing things. And I don't want to admit I haven't been governing things. Well, the beauty of it is, if it's intranet content, the scope of what you're governing is much more succinct. It's much more, it's smaller, right? It's easier to wrap your mind around. So that's something I would say, it's okay. Just take that and run with that. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to point out, though, is in the consumer experience, whether we know it or not, we are being conditioned to consume information in a different way. So the traditional way of consuming information, I mean, we'll call back to when I was a kid, was in a newspaper, right? And so if you think about the evolution of websites and website information, it was basically a newspaper layout on a page. That has changed dramatically, right? People are scrolling, they're consuming their information through video, small bite-sized chunks, and it's undeniable. You can't help it. That's the way it's going. So I'm not saying that we need to just throw everything out from an intranet and start from scratch here, because one thing that David and I did earlier this year is we talked about the different generations that exist. And we're talking about 4, sometimes 5 generations inside of an organization. And if you're really trying to get that employee engagement and craft the employee experience, you have to hit on all generations. And they have different propensities, different likes, different ways of consuming information. With that said, though, there are plenty of Gen Xers who are on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
So thinking about all those things and looking at, kind of going back to what the 2 main use cases of information, or the types of information on an intranet, are being resources and news information, we're going to have to adapt intranets to meet the employees where they are and craft the information in such ways that they're used to consuming it.
Yeah.
That's a long-winded answer. Sorry.
Yeah, no. That's because I think there's I guess my own perspective on this is, intranets are a reflection of an organization's culture, right?
I agree.
It's not, it isn't the only way that an organization's culture is displayed to its employees, but it is one way of reflecting the organization's culture. And I think that something will be lost in that if it is reduced down to a single text box on a homepage. That there's something not quite warm about that experience, people. But I do think it's going to mean that organizations need to work a little harder to create something that people want to go to and use, right? And there has to be more emphasis put on what is in it for the employee to come here. What value are they receiving from this thing? And I think it is going to change the way that we think about delivering success. I think you talked about the kind of the champion, the visionary, the exec stakeholder. Those things are worth doing because it is important to be able to convey the culture of the business through this thing.
100%
But
agree.
like if you think like of the chat bot, right, or the chat box, that will also require the user to know what they are looking for, right? Because they would need to come up with their own use cases, like, do I want to get latest news? So I need like to go there and ask explicitly for that. While like the intranet homepage, for example, already provides a lot of that structure. And it's just basically for me to go there and consume, or like by push notifications, you can also reach and bring the information to the people. Sorry, then David, you want to go?
I was going to say, in your experiences of working with customers on intranet projects, there is a there's a big kind of organizational change element to running these projects, right? I think less so if you're replacing something that's very successful already, right? Kind of, upgrading a successful SharePoint intranet or moving from one technology to the other. People kind of understand what that looks like. In an organization where they've perhaps not had something, do you think that organizations underestimate the change elements of these projects or perhaps overestimate them?
I would say that they don't know it to underestimate or overestimate. I believe that what I found anyway in these, let's say, okay, let's cover a couple things here. In my opinion, I'm saying these words with intent. An intranet project, if you have nothing already, it should be changing the organization. It
Yeah.
should be making a positive impact, strategic impact to the organization. It should be doing something. If it's not doing something, I don't want to do it. So we actually select our clients that are ready and want that kind of change because that's what we're trying to do, right? What I would say though is that they don't know how to get that change more often than not. And the piece that we I think see that's kind of missing is really focusing on the human element. One of the things I talk about is ownership because in order to get change or people to actually use your solution, they, in my opinion, I want them to feel like they have some sort of ownership and agency over it. And so, what that often entails or requires in an internet project is, well, including them in the process, which is tough if you're talking about a 2,000 person organization, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
Right, and that's really the key. So I think there should be organizational change that's baked into an internet project, and how to get it is really the challenge. I think people don't understand that, and that can be paralyzing.
Well, so what would be like your piece of advice for organizations that are in the process of introducing a new intranet or are looking like for a new intranet from based like on your like a lot of the experience that you have already, like 27 years delivering internet projects?
I have to always go back to why. You really need to answer that question. At least, look, you don't need to answer it, but you at least got to ask, right? I feel like a lot of people don't even ask why. They just say, "Oh, I think we need that." That's not a good enough reason to do anything. I just feel like or think we need it. You really need to understand what you're trying to drive towards, what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it. And I think David said something that's really really relevant here is that really an intranet is a reflection of the culture. It's either a reflection of the culture you have, which may not be the best reflection or what you want, but it can be a reflection of the culture that you want to have, right? So if you're trying to change that culture, an intranet could be a good place to start, and that's a solid why. But that's what I would say people really need to focus on before they embark on trying to find some sort of solution. Is really, really having that compelling reason and understanding it as best they can. Ask the question at least.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a great book like starting with why.
100%. Yep. Simon Sinek. Amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
But I meet organizations. I'm sure you do as well. That perhaps on the fence about intranets. Someone at an event recently said to me, "Oh, Dave, intranets, what a blast from the past. I haven't thought about intranets in years." And I hadn't heard this line for a while. But I guess there are organizations out there that are on the fence about intranets. What would you say to an organization that is sort of debating about whether they need something like this?
Oh, there's a few things that come to mind here, right? As far as like why, same thing, like why would you need an intranet at all? I do believe that there is, at some point, there's critical mass necessary. With that said, I mean, we're not 150 employees at Klarinet, and we have an intranet, right? Of course we do. So first of all, I would say critical mass. The second thing is interesting. I've been thinking about this lately, and I'm going to put together a blog post around this, and it's really around a hierarchy of needs for internal communications. And the foundation of a lot of what we're trying to accomplish in internal communications and getting employee engagement, alignment, all those things happening is having a reliable, reasonable, easily manageable piece that provides that communication. And more often than not, an intranet is a way to do that. And one thing I want to make sure that we're very clear on is an intranet is not the only way. We're not suggesting that. None of us would agree to that here at all. But it is one major component. And so what I find what's interesting, David, is that you can sense when you're talking to people, their level of satisfaction with the culture of their organization. And what I have found anecdotally is that those who are not satisfied with the culture that they have don't have an intranet.
Yeah.
So that's a good start.
Or have one that don't rate it.
Right. Well, we go back to that word love, right? One of the questions we love to ask people is, what do you love about your intranet?
Right.
Right? It's a great question.
Yeah. Well, I love a dramatic question.
But it's a solid one. It's great because it inspires them to think about what they actually like about it, love about it. And if they can't answer it, then they need to think a bit more. So
Let's bring this to a close today with a couple of questions for you, Dan. What are you most excited about in the future of work? Doesn't necessarily need to be intranet specific. Is there something that you're very excited about at the moment in this area?
I actually am. There's something it has nothing to do with technology. Actually, everything is to do with it. But anyway, it's really more around this idea that I think is starting to really take flight in business, in that we cannot treat people like cogs in a machine. And that means we have to look at technology differently as well. That I think is happening, and it's going to continue to happen. And those are the kinds of people that I want to talk to, work with, partner with, right? So that is exciting. I think that's happening for sure.
And maybe like the final question. So what is like currently your favorite app? So that doesn't need to be within the context of Microsoft, and any app.
I got to go Copilot, right? I mean, I leverage Copilot all the time for different things, and I'm pretty excited about it. I hate to be cliche, right, David? But AI right now is pretty darn exciting. So for me, that's what it is.
Yeah, I think it's one of those applications. I admit, I'm not a huge user of Copilot, but it's one of those things that I now don't think that I could do without it. I just think from that kind of summarizing meetings, putting together notes, asking it questions about lengthy stuff that I've got to read. I think I can't imagine not having it anymore now.
Me neither. Doing research, getting succinct answers on deep research, amazing. Yeah.
Yes.
Very
Do
cool.
you also chat like with Copilot? Do you use like the voice mode as well?
I use both. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Same
Yes.
thing.
We've had a number of people that have said that on the dog walk seems to be the sort of common time that people are having kind of verbal conversations with this thing. Walking around the local park, walking the dog, talking to Copilot seems to be the
super
the new
interesting
way to go. Yeah.
It's Copilot therapy. There we go.
Copilot therapy.
Yes.
Yes. I suspect that's happening as well. And Dan, for people that want to get in touch with you, talk to you, what's the best way for people to do this?
Honestly, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. Maybe too much, as you guys probably know. So look me up on LinkedIn, Daniel Amaro, Klarinet Solutions. You'll find me.
Amazing. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dan.
Cheers.